Let's start with the truth most people never say out loud. The silent treatment isn't silence, it's control. It's punishment disguised as a space. It's a way for someone to make you chase them, apologize to them, or shrink yourself just to get back into their good graces. And the reason it hurts so deeply is simple. Humans are wired for connection. So when someone you care about suddenly shuts down, ignores you, or pretends you don't exist, your brain treats it like a threat. Your heart speeds up. Your mind spirals. You start wondering what you did wrong. And that's exactly why the silent treatment works. It makes you feel responsible for their emotional behavior. But today, we're taking that power back because you don't beat the silent treatment by yelling. You don't beat it by begging. You beat it by refusing to play the game. Stay calm, don't chase. Their silence is not your cue to panic. Most people don't realize this, but the silent treatment doesn't actually begin when they stop talking. It begins the moment you start doubting yourself. It begins the moment their silence becomes louder than your self-worth. When you start replaying every conversation, every message, every tiny moment to figure out what you did wrong, that's when the control shifts. That's when their silence becomes a leash and your anxiety becomes a collar. The reason the silent treatment works so effectively is because it hits you where humans are most vulnerable, to fear of abandonment. When someone you care about pulls away, your brain reacts as if you're in danger. Your mind races. Your chest tightens. You feel this urge, almost like survival, to fix it, to reach out, to say something, anything that will bring them back. That panic is natural, but it's also exactly what keeps you stuck in a harmful cycle. Here's the part nobody tells you. Your panic is their power. The moment you start chasing, the moment you start over-explaining, apologizing, or begging for clarity, you unintentionally reinforce their behavior. You teach them that emotional withdrawal gives them control. And once someone learns that silence makes you fold, they will use it every time they want compliance without confrontation. Staying calm is not about pretending you don't care. It's about refusing to hand over your emotional steering wheel. It's reminding yourself that you don't negotiate with manipulation, even the subtle kind that disguises itself as "I just need space," when it's really punishment. Staying calm is reclaiming your dignity in the moments where fear tries to hijack your voice. Calm doesn't mean passive. Calm means centered. It means you don't respond from insecurity. You don't spiral. You don't flood them with texts asking for reassurance. You take a breath, you ground yourself, and you say to your own nervous system, "We're safe. We're okay." Someone else's silence is not an emergency. The truth is, emotionally mature people communicate. They don't disappear when they're upset. They don't withhold affection to win an argument. They don't punish you for having a perspective. So when someone chooses silence instead of honesty, you must recognize that this says more about their emotional capacity than your worth. When you stay calm, you interrupt their strategy. When you don't chase, you break the reward loop. When you hold still, they lose the power they were trying to gain. Silence only controls people who fear it. Once you stop fearing it, the silent treatment becomes nothing more than an uncomfortable moment, not a manipulation. But here's what calm really looks like. Emotional self-control. It's the choice to let their behavior speak for itself. It's the strength to resist the urge to fix what you didn't break. It's the courage to let the silence sit without immediately filling it with apologies you don't owe. People often ask, but what if they walk away? If the only way someone stays is by you abandoning yourself, let them walk. Because your peace is not a bargaining chip. Your self-worth is not up for negotiation. Someone who values you will talk, even when it's uncomfortable. Someone who respects you will communicate, even when they're upset. Someone who loves you will not weaponize silence to make you feel small. Staying calm doesn't just shut down the silent treatment, it exposes it. Suddenly, the behavior that used to control you stops getting the reaction it relied on. They expect you to panic. They expect you to chase. They expect you to lose sleep. But when you stay grounded, when you respond with clarity instead of fear, you force them to confront the reality that silence won't get them what they want. This is how you take back your power, not by fighting, not by begging, not by trying harder, but by standing still while their silence collapses under its own weight. Calm is not weakness. Calm is emotional dominance. Calm says, I am not afraid of your silence. I am not responsible for your avoidance. I am not bending just because you withdrew. The silent treatment can only break people who haven't yet realized their strength. Once you know your worth, once you know your voice, once you know the difference between space and punishment, you stop reacting to silence like a threat and you start treating it like information. That is what staying calm really means. State your boundary clearly. Don't beg for basic respect. There comes a moment in every relationship, romantic, family, friendships, workplace, where you have to decide what you will allow and what you will no longer tolerate. And that moment is usually triggered by something small, a comment that cut too deep, a tone that crossed the line, a pattern of behavior that's gone on too long. Most people feel the discomfort, feel the disrespect, feel the shift, but they swallow it. They avoid the confrontation. They tell themselves, maybe I'm overreacting, or it's not a big deal, or I don't want to make things worse. And without realizing it, they trade clarity for peace and end up losing both. Boundaries are not about controlling other people. They are about controlling your access to peace, dignity, and emotional safety. When you state a boundary clearly, you're not threatening somebody. You're not disrespecting them. You're not being dramatic. You are simply protecting the parts of you that should have been protected all along. Folky. But many people struggle with this because they fear being seen as difficult, sensitive, or rude. So instead of saying what needs to be said, they soften their words. They hint, they sugarcoat, they whisper what should be spoken firmly. That's why boundaries fail. Not because they're wrong, but because they're delivered like apologies. You don't need to beg for respect. You don't need to convince someone to treat you properly. You don't need to sell them on your word. Respect is not a negotiation. It's the minimum requirement for access to you. If someone cannot meet that, they don't get closer. They don't get more of you. They don't get to benefit from your kindness while ignoring your humanity. A clear boundary sounds like this. I won't continue this conversation if you raise your voice. I'm not okay with being insulted, even as a joke. I'm willing to talk, but not if I'm being dismissed. This doesn't work for me. Control. It's direct. Control. And here's the important part. You say it once, not 10 times. The more you repeat it, the more it sounds like you're asking for permission rather than stating a standard. People who respect you will adjust. People who don't will test you. And people who benefit from your silence will get upset when you finally speak. Their reaction does not mean your boundary is wrong. It means your silence was convenient. The moment you start stating your boundaries, you disrupt the comfortable dynamic others have gotten used to. You stop being the version of you who absorbs everything quietly. You stop being the person they can walk over without consequence. You stop being the easy one, the predictable one, the one who never pushes back. And for people who counted on that, your strength will feel like an attack. But your voice is not aggression. Your clarity is not disrespect. Your standard is not selfish. Begging for basic respect is what destroys self-esteem. Every time you allow behavior that hurts you, you teach yourself that your feelings don't matter. Every time you stay quiet to keep the peace, you create a war inside yourself. Every time you let someone cross the line without consequences, you erase a piece of your own worth. Speaking up is not the hard part. Believing you deserve to speak up, that's the real challenge. Because once you believe that, your tone changes, your posture changes, your presence changes. You won't walk into conversations with fear. You won't accept half apologies. You won't justify someone's disrespect because you care about them. You will care about yourself, too. Here's the truth. A boundary is not a request. A boundary is not a debate. A boundary is not a performance. It is a declaration of what you will and will not allow, and the consequences that follow. Some people will only respect your boundaries when they see you enforce them. When they realize you're willing to walk away from the table instead of sitting there starving for validation. When they realize your silence is no longer compliance, it's closure. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for the bare minimum. You're asking for the respect you give so freely to everyone else. And you shouldn't have to beg for it. You shouldn't have to plead for it. You couldn't have to explain why dignity matters. Your boundary is the line. And if someone can't step up to meet it, let them step out of your life. You don't set boundaries to control others. You set them to control your peace. You don't enforce boundaries to push people away. You enforce them to protect the parts of you that deserve to be treated right. You don't raise your voice. You raise your standards. And once you do, everything changes.